It's that time again, guys. It is New Tolkien Book Day. Today we have box set number 2 of the History of Middle-earth series. You may recall a while back we did box set number 1 that has the Silmarillion, Unfinished Tales, and Book of Lost Tales 1 and 2. Today we are bringing in box set number 2, which just released from HarperCollins, coming out soon here in the United States by William Morrow, which encompasses the Lays of Beleriand, the Shaping of Middle-earth, and the Lost Road. Here you can see them side by side. Obviously, they're going to look pretty sharp on the shelf. And these, again, as we went over last time, they do have the reversible covers, so we'll show off the covers for each of these as well. The box art on the box sets show off John Howe's amazing artwork. And the spines, if you look at them the other way, they have History of Middle-earth 1, History of Middle-earth 2, denoting their box set numbers. There will be 4 of these in total as they are released progressively throughout the year. But let's dive into these new books. And the box itself, like I mentioned, it shows off the artwork that is represented on the 3 books themselves. First up, we have the Lays of Beleriand, which has this awesome piece of art with Fingolfin challenging Morgoth. Just an incredibly epic showdown. One of those incredibly memorable moments from the Silmarillion. The Shaping of Middle-earth is the next volume. It has a beautiful art piece depicting the Siege of Angband. So this is Morgoth's great fortress of Angband. And, you know, these obviously do cover up the entire cover, front and back. And then finally, we have The Lost Road and Other Writings, this featuring a beautiful art piece of the Tower of Elwing. That's what this tower right here is. And we've got the orcs in the foreground. Another amazing piece by John Howe. Now, a common question I get on these box sets is, you know, what am I going to find in each of these volumes? So I wanted to show you both of the covers. So we'll take a look, page through the books a little bit, and I'll kind of explain what each of these books entails. First up, we have The Lays of Beleriand, and this book actually has 5 different lays, which, if you're not familiar with the term lays, it's basically this heroic, epic poetry. So there's a point in time where Tolkien was writing these tales in this poetic structure. And there's 5 in particular in here. We get a couple versions of the Lay of the Children of Húrin. So that's predominantly the tale of Turin Turambar. We get some shorter poems in the middle that were kind of abandoned early in Tolkien's writing of them. We get the Flight of the Noldoli from Valinor, the Lay of Eärendil, and the Lay of the Fall of Gondolin. But the biggest by far is the Lay of Lithien, and this is the tale of Beren and Luthien, but again, told in that epic poetry prose. And we get some notes throughout from Christopher Tolkien, of course. You know, he gives his different commentary on each of these stories, but you just get pages and pages of this amazing poetry that tells the story that we're all familiar with from the Silmarillion. But I've always loved this because I think it's really cool to experience the story in this way. It's unique. And there's a beauty to the language, as there always is with Tolkien, of course. But seeing it told in this poetic structure is really, really cool. So that's definitely the highlight of this particular book for me. And there you have it. There is the other side of this particular cover. These are, again, reversible. So for those of you who might have older copies of the History of Middle-earth, you'll recognize this look. So this is the old school look for the Lays of Beleriand. It's got the 3 on there to denote that this is the 3rd volume of the History of Middle-earth. Very nice, very clean. If you like that more classic History of Middle-earth look on your bookshelf, you can't go wrong. Me personally, like I said in my last box set video, I have a really hard time covering up John Howe artwork, so I will probably display mine with the epic Morgoth Fingolfin duel for the Lays of Beleriand and for the other volumes as well. Next up, we have The Shaping of Middle-earth. And this is one where Christopher Tolkien, he starts showing us how his father went from those early stories that we saw in the Book of Lost Tales to what would eventually become the Silmarillion. And a couple notable inclusions in this particular book. We have the earliest version of the Silmarillion, as well as the Quenta. And you can really start to see the change of tone from those fairy stories that we find in the Book of Lost Tales to where you get that more dark, Nordic-inspired storytelling that we're familiar with from the Silmarillion. Real quick, I wanted to point out some of my personal favorite parts of this particular book. We do get the first Silmarillion map that Tolkien drew. So here on page 228, we have the western extension, and on 231, the eastward extension. And we have notes throughout from Christopher describing, the important locations. But then the very next chapter here is the Ambarkanta, and this actually shows us some even more development of maps. So we'll get here, and then we just get this nice series of maps where Tolkien is trying to plan out how the world looks, and not just the land that we come to know as Middle-earth, but what lies beyond it. And this kind of develops over time. And here we have, we're starting to get closer to what we've seen in things like the Silmarillion. So here we have the Sea of Helcar, Cuiviénen. This is where the elves first awoke. We have Valinor over here. So it's starting to look a little more familiar. And then finally we get to this map that looks much more similar to what we would see in something like the Silmarillion. We've still got, the Sea of Helcar here, but then Beleriand is marked up here where most of the First Age events take place. And it's just really cool in my mind to see, how Tolkien developed this rich history. And then, of course, what would a Middle-earth book be without, let's get one more map in there. That's perfect. I love it. So there we go. We get one more map. We even have gnomes back when Tolkien was calling elves gnomes instead of elves. There we have The Shaping of Middle-earth with its classic cover. So there we go. That's The Shaping of Middle-earth. Finally, we have The Lost Road and Other Writings. And I have to say, this is one of my favorite volumes of the history of Middle-earth. You may remember me talking about The Lost Road in some of my videos on Numenor. And that is from C.S. Lewis and Tolkien deciding, to write tales together. C.S. Lewis decided to write a space travel story. Tolkien was going to tell a time travel story. Now, C.S. Lewis's ended up being his space trilogy. So he actually went on and published an entire trilogy from this prompt, whereas Tolkien would end up abandoning this, and, the story of Numenor would end up being in other parts of his Middle-earth legendarium. But during the story of The Lost Road, there's this present-day pair of a father and son, and they're kind of connected to their ancestors, these fathers and sons who have the same meaning in their names throughout time. And they eventually come to the days of Amandil and Elendil in Numenor. And it's the days leading up to the fall of Numenor. And there's some really great dialogue that doesn't appear elsewhere between Amandil and Elendil, talking about the danger of being among the faithful, and Elendil kind of getting to that point where he's ready to join the faithful. I could go on and on about The Lost Road. At the end of the day, I highly recommend it. Definitely, this is a volume that I think is really, really cool, especially if you're interested in the Numenor stories. But honestly, that's just one part of this book. There's two more. There's Valinor and Middle-earth before the Lord of the Rings. And then there's a whole section on etymologies, which is genealogies and lists of names. Some really deep dive stuff if you're more the linguist type. And then, of course, you can also flip the cover for The Lost Road and Other Writings. You get this nice regal blue. This is the 5th volume of the History of Middle-earth series. And there you have the 3 volumes in their alternate reversed covers. If you prefer the more classic History of Middle-earth look, you can certainly do that. And like I said, it's hard for me to cover up John Howe's amazing illustrations, but there is something about this classic History of Middle-earth look that is definitely appealing. So we'll see. Maybe after the entire set comes out, I'll have to make a final decision on how I want to display this. I wouldn't be surprised if for some this has definitely got some nostalgia, if these were some of those first History of Middle-earth books that you owned, and now to have these in a nice hardcover presentation would be pretty cool, and I'm sure they'd look sharp on the shelf as well. Well, there you go, guys. It is box set number 2 of the History of Middle-earth series. The next one up is box set number 3. That is coming in July. Now, I've had some people ask, why does this box set only have 3 books, whereas box set 1 and box set 3 both have 4? The reason for that is box set number 3, if you're paying attention to the volumes, that's actually the history of the Lord of the Rings, which is kind of like a subset of the History of Middle-earth. So the next 4 books will really focus on the history of Tolkien writing the Lord of the Rings. So you'll see, on the slipcover, it's got that iconic image of Gandalf coming up to Bag End by John Howe. So that's why it's divided up the way it is. From what I can tell, that's just my assumption, but that seems logical. The next box set is really focusing in on Lord of the Rings, and they probably didn't want to split those up. Well, there you go, guys. It is box set number 2 of 4 of the History of Middle-earth series. I really enjoy having these in individual volumes. It's much less unruly to read than my big set that has the entire 12 books broken up into just 3. This is a little better if I want to dive into something like, say, The Lost Road. It's a lot more convenient to just grab one of these volumes, start reading. So I'm really glad that we've got these. I will say, I do hope that someday down the road we get illustrated editions of each of these. I just think it would be really cool to turn someone loose on, some illustrations of things that Tolkien abandoned. We've gotten a little bit of that in the past where, Alan Lee has this great illustration that he did of Tevildo, where Sauron is like this cat creature. And I just think it would be awesome to just turn some artists loose on some of the abandoned things that we find in these stories. Now, if you want to pick this up for yourself, I do have links in the description. Those are affiliate links, so they do help out the channel if you're in the market for these. I'd appreciate it if you use the links in the description. If not, that's cool too. I just hope that you guys enjoy reading Tolkien, diving deeper into this world. And thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time on Nerd of the Rings.